Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Obi Thorn Alliance. What are we doing today, Jacob?
We're reviewing Shrinking on Apple TV Plus.
So if you want to see what we thought about Shrinking, stick around. So Shrinking, Apple TV Plus, and Apple TV doesn't bring out a whole lot of things, but what we've said many times before, when they do bring something out, it seems to be pretty good quality. So summarize Shrinking for me. What is this show about?
Basically, it covers 5 stages of grieving with Jason Segel playing Jimmy, who is a psychiatrist, and he has unfortunately lost his significant other, being his wife, and he has to learn to be a father and kind of step up and parent his daughter, and then kind of actually do his job and his patience, and then going through the 5 stages of grief and kind of being a better person and eventually getting over the other side and being not okay with his wife passing, but realizing eventually you have to mourn and move on with your life.
Yeah, and this show's got a few elements to it. You know, we follow the storyline of him and connecting with his daughter. We follow the storyline of his fellow psychologists that work with him. So Harrison Ford, who plays Dr. Paul Rhodes, and then we have Jessica Williams, who plays Gabby. So we follow their lives, and then we also get to see not only Jimmy's life, but the patients. So basically in the show, he decides that he wants to have a different go at being a psychologist. He says, sick of listening to these people talk about how annoying their husband is, or how they don't speak to the barista at the coffee shop even though they're secretly in love with them, to basically saying, we're going to go out and we're going to do it. And he has a really hands-on approach, and it's a really, really unique twist storyline about a psychologist. I think is very, very cool. So anything you want to add to that, or do we get into our scoring?
Yeah, overall, I think At the Court has a really awesome storyline, but sometimes it thumbles along in the story, but overall, it's a good show.
Sweet. So let's get into the verdicts. So, as usual, we have our 10 categories. They can get a score between 0 and 10, 10 being the highest, and we give it a total number out of 100. So the plot, what do you give the plot for The Shrinking?
Overall, it got an 8. Really liked the whole message about moving on and grieving and then trying to do your job. Really like that aspect. I did find with the storyline, sometimes it was all over the place, but I guess the point of that is life can be messy and all over the place. And it's not just about Jimmy, the main character, it's about everyone. But sometimes it felt like the main core of the storyline was awesome, but everyone else, it's like making a cake. If you don't get one element right, you mess it up. But yeah.
Yeah, so I give it an 8.5 for the plot. I really thought it was great. I think it touched on a lot of cool elements. There's a lot of bits to the story, and I think throughout the whole season, it didn't go too far-fetched. It stayed within its lane, and there's not too many shows where I go, that was unnecessary. There's not too many shows that I watch and go, they didn't have something unnecessary in it, but I think this show didn't. It had nothing unnecessary. It was very raw and real, but so funny. I found myself laughing at so many parts, so I give it an 8.5 for the plot. What do you give the characters here?
A 7 for me. I liked mostly all the characters, but Liz, for me, they even kept swearing about Liz, but I do think that was intentional. She was meant to be the nosy next door neighbor that had to be in everyone's life, because really she didn't have her own life. So I get the point of her character, but I just found she was terrible. But overall, I liked everyone else. Liz drops down 3 points just for herself. Even her husband was better than her, and as a couple, I don't see how they match and actually like each other. They were complete opposites.
I've actually given the characters a perfect 10. I really liked it. I thought Jason Segel's character of Jimmy was exactly what you expected for Jason Segel. I found it very, very funny, but also touching. I thought it was great. I actually like Liz's character. I think that Krista Miller basically played the same role she did in Scrubs, so she was exactly what you expected, and I think she nailed that nosy neighbor that is caring but in a harsh way, and I think they nailed that. Gabby was a great character. Harrison Ford was a standout. I didn't realize Harrison Ford was so funny. Even the daughter played a good role. I didn't think that she was annoying. Like, it made sense, her grieving. It's quite often we review shows and go, oh, the daughter was, too much teenage angst, a bit too much. I didn't think that. And I think all his clients and his other friends did a really good job. They didn't go over the top with their characters. And the neighbor Liz's husband, Derek, he was the funniest. He was the standout in this show. He had very few lines, but every time he was in, I thought he was amazing. So I can't fault any characters in this show. So a perfect 10 for me. What about the acting here?
A 9. I think this is the best part of the show. When you get actors like Harrison Ford on board, you know you have a winner when it comes to actors wanting to act in this show. And Jason Segel, those two together, and everyone else stand out in this category. Really enjoyed the acting. Best part of the show.
I'm going to give the acting a 9.5. I can't think of anything to fault it, but I'm just not going to give it a perfect score. I think everyone did what they needed. And yeah, basically Jacob said, they had such good casting. How are they not going to do a good job? And the actors surprised me with what they could do. Ignoring Krista Miller's character, she was basically the same as Scrubs, but I'm cool with that. Jason Segel, we've seen a bit of him act like that in a few roles, but Harrison Ford surprised me a lot, so 9.5. How entertaining was this show out of 10?
7.5. It did feel like there were moments. It was like a seesaw. It started really strong and then it dipped a little bit, and then I liked how it ended, and then that ending scene kind of ruined it, but overall, really good.
I gave it an 8.5 for entertainment factor. I found the show a bit more relatable than probably Jacob did, so for that, I found it a lot more entertaining. It was a bit slow at times, and I do mark it down a bit for pacing when we get to that point, but thoroughly entertained throughout. Not that I was on the edge of my seat, but I wanted to know what happened next, and the fact the episodes were really short, I got through it quick. I think if they were a bit longer, maybe I would have felt that it dragged on, but it wasn't. It was very short, so even if it was a slow episode, it didn't go physically for that long, so it didn't feel long either way. What about the presentation? So this show obviously isn't full of visual effects, but how would you rate how they put it together?
I gave it a 7 overall. I liked how the opening credits with the music, it gets you set in the mood with the little people walking up the stairs, stuff like that, but it doesn't do anything remarkable, and that's why it gets a 7.
I'm giving it an 8 for the presentation just because I like the order they did the episodes. They didn't try and leave you on cliffhangers. They didn't have some backward Tarantino-esque movie where the timeline's all scrambled. It was just very simple, plain. They didn't try and hide things and have a massive reveal. I really liked the music. This show had lots of music. Also had lots of Australian artists through it, so I think the music was probably a standout for me. And some reason with Apple, they always have weird, quirky starts. They like their intro with a little video, like Severance. If you haven't seen they have really odd intros, and they did it again here. So I thought it was really cool. What about pacing?
For me, it's a 7. Like I've said, really strong starts, but I get why it had a seesaw moments, because it's very much like life, but sometimes it felt like the writing didn't know what it wanted to focus on, but sometimes life gets crazy, and that's why it felt a little bit wonky, the pacing, but I think this show was going more realistic of what life is. Sometimes you can't control everything, and I understand why it was like that, but for me, I kind of didn't like it when it didn't focus on the grieving and the mourning of the 5 stages of grieving.
Yeah, so I'd give it pacing 7.5, the same reason. It kind of seesaws a little bit. The more I think about it, it makes sense. But that's when I gave the rating, I thought 7.5 was fair, and I'll stick with it. But the more I think about it, it does make sense why they did it in that way. What about the ending? And I know we've talked about this, so we differ a bit where we think the show ended. So what did you give the ending?
I gave it a 7 for me. That ending cutscene, or what happened with the ending, kind of ruined it, but how the characters mature and they have goals and things in that nature, It gives them purpose for the next season, but for me, I can't get what happened. Talk about it in spoilers, but for me, I don't. It completely changed of what the show was supposed to do. For me, they could have got rid of that scene, and we could have got it in dialogue in season 2.
So I gave the ending again another perfect 10. We will talk about it in spoilers, but there's a bit of an extra scene that's right at the end, and I guess we interpret it a bit differently. But the main story with the main characters, that's where I consider the ending. And I think it was perfect. I think it closed off a lot of stories, or at least gave hope for the next season. They didn't overdo it. They didn't throw some kind of dramatic cliffhanger in it. Maybe with this extra scene, but it depends how you interpret it. But with the main characters, no big cliffhangers. And also surprised me, in particular, Harrison Ford's character, where he finished by the end of the season. I was very surprised, and I liked the direction they went. So I think the ending was almost perfect. It was really happy and cheerful. I just think it ticked a lot of boxes, and it's really looking forward to the next season. As to where it will go, I don't know, but even if it ended with one season, I would still be quite happy with how they concluded it. What about the originality of this series?
I gave it a 9. I really liked the whole 5 stages of grief with some comedy elements. I really can't think of a show that has done this before, and it really nails that aspect of originality, and that's one of its best qualities that it does, really strong in that aspect.
So I went a little bit higher with a 9.5. It's not like really wild in terms of its uniqueness. It's just they found a way to kind of mix serious topic with a bit of drama. Like, I'm not saying the show was drama filled, but it would fall into that drama category. But then also have it funny. I like that. There's been other shows where, there might be, it's a doctor sitcom, or in Frasier, what was one of the characters like a psychiatrist, or like that's very much like that's a sitcom, where this was funny, or as funny as those shows, but it was drama. So they found a good mix of having happy moments, sad moments, serious moments, and funny moments. I think it's just that makes it original for me. But not the storyline itself wasn't original. It's just the mixture of all the elements put together, I think, makes it fairly original. Target audience, what do you think that is, and what do you give it for its target audience?
The score for its target audience, I gave it an 8, and for me, I think they were trying to nail people that like Jason Segel and his kind of comedy banter, and for people that obviously like comedy shows and dramas, and for me, they really nailed that element. But if you don't like comedies and don't like shows that go seesaw direction, I don't think you're going to like this show. But overall, it hits its audience demographic, and for those people that love those shows, they're going to watch this show.
So I gave it the same. I gave it an 8. I think it's going to attract the Jason Segel fans, and I think they're going to stick around and be like, this is better than what I thought. This is... I was expecting to be all out laughs, but it's actually quite serious, but they just get the mix right. I think it nailed that target audience. And I think those that even aren't a fan I think if you watch it, which again, being on Apple TV is sometimes a disadvantage because not everyone has it. I think if you give it a go, you're probably going to continue with it. One, because the episode lengths and the amount of episodes, I think you'll continue through it. But basically its target audience has to be Apple users, because not too many Android users are going to be having access to this. So last one, time value, was it worth watching?
Yes, I gave it a 7 overall. It's a solid show, but I don't think it's for everyone. Definitely enjoyed my time, but I don't think everyone would like it. Depends what shows you like.
I gave it an 8.5 for time value. I really think it was worth watching, but I don't think for everyone it's going to be the same case. But I still think it's a very high score. There's going to be some people that don't find anything relatable about it, or don't like Jason Segel or Harrison Ford. So 8.5. So for a grand total, Jacob, you've given it 76.5%. Do you think that's fair?
I think it's fair. It's a solid show, but it's sometimes it can be all over a place. But overall, I still think it's worth watching. But yeah,
I gave it a staggering 88%, which, there's a big difference. Usually we're quite close with our scores. This is one of the most discrepancies we've had. I really like this show. I think it's probably one of my favorite season ones I've had of a show so far. And I'm looking forward to the next season. And I also like the fact that I don't think it's going to be 10 season deep show. I reckon we're getting 2 to 3 max, kind of like Ted Lasso. And I'm looking forward to that because I don't think it's going to get the chance to ruin itself. It's going to be short and sharp. And I'm really happy about that. So it was a great project and a great show. So 88% for me. So we're going to get into some spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show, maybe flick it off here. If you have, share your thoughts and join the discussion to what we think. So, spoilers, discussion topics, what do you want to talk about first?
I guess that ending with what happened, we both see it differently.
Yeah, so we're referring to his client, Grace, who is constantly complaining about her boyfriend, who's a bit of a douchebag, who within the show actually gets in a fight and punches Jason Segel's character. So we see... He basically says, just leave him. Get rid of him. Go elsewhere. Like, you don't need to put up with his crap. And he thinks he's great because she says, yep, I've left. I've gone to Vancouver or wherever it was, and I've left him. And he's all happy. He thinks he's doing a great job as a psychologist, only to later see her out walking with him and be like, she lied to me, or she came back to him. And then he agrees to be a therapist again, and she's like, yeah. And then he basically says, you just need to give him a boot moment, spill his coffee, do something, telling that you're not scared of him. And she ultimately pushes him off a cliff, which is really far, but it depends how do you interpret it. So how do you interpret that scene, and what do you think it means for season 2?
For season 2, that it might have no overall effects, but if they want to take it in an interesting direction, that the police can get involved and that the practice could be in trouble for police, or she could say, it wasn't my fault because I was told by my psychiatrist to do it, and then, that's what they could lean to.
Yeah, at first I thought, it's putting a cliffhanger on season 2 that, it's going to start off with maybe an investigation into why we didn't say to push him off a cliff. He did suggest to knock over his coffee. Yeah. But they might be like, she's now getting investigated for murder. We're going to ask her psychologist, what's she been saying? Like, I don't know how they go about that. But I actually think that it's not going to do that. I reckon that's the end of her storyline. We don't find out any more about her, or maybe we just get told she goes to jail. But it's more to show that she stood up for herself. Because I think ultimately the fans, not that you want someone to die, plus it's also fictional. They're like, she needs to stand up for herself. Like, we got to see him be so rude to her in that last scene that, he deserved this kind of thing. So I think it's more for us to go, yep, that's a win for her. She stood up for herself, but to the extreme, which is maybe that's the comedy part of it. Opposed to if she just spilt the coffee, he suggested, then we go, he's going to continue to be a prick to her anyway. So this kind of ends that. Like, he's not going to be a prick anymore. Or also maybe he doesn't die, like maybe he's just gets badly injured or something, or he gets caught in a tree branch. So we don't know, but I don't think it's going to be a big part of that season 2. Do you think, what about this whole professional boundary of him having someone live with him that he's also the psychologist for?
That didn't really go anywhere. I thought it might have gone somewhere, but besides patient kissing his daughter, it didn't really go anywhere.
I guess for that, you're happy to see something come out of that, but I thought that the season was going to run with him being a lot more drama and being a problem, but he kind of sorted himself out pretty quick and we got a happy ending for him, which is great. Like, who doesn't want a happy ending? But it seemed all a bit too easy, so maybe season 2 might venture into him having a few more problems and dealing with his anger, and Jimmy having to be a bit more of a psychologist than a friend again. What about Gabby and her relationship with Jimmy, and then her ex-husband artist? What do you see happening there, or what would you like to see happen?
I don't know if I would like to see Jimmy and Gabby together, but obviously the writers have something planned for their relationship.
I'm happy either way. I think I just don't want to see drama. I'd like to see them either mutually agree to be friends, or something serious come out of it. But I don't want to see their friendship end, or there to be too much drama. What about Harrison Ford? Did you think that his character was like, I thought that the season was maybe going to end with him having something horrific happen to him with his Parkinson's, but that wasn't the case. So where do you think is going to happen with his character?
Paul, I would assume he's gonna try and be a better uncle to his grandson, and then try and date his doctor.
Yeah, I think that's where it will probably go. I reckon. I hope that if, let's say the show goes for 3 seasons, I hope that it doesn't end with him dying or something. I hope it's just he retires and he goes off and, lives with his daughter and, spends and we don't see what happens after that. I'd like to see that. Do you like the way they went about the Jason Segel's character and his daughter and how they grieved and, kind of didn't get along, and he mentions he had prostitutes in one of the final episodes, partying and grieving his wife. So I think if she wasn't there to pick up the pieces, the storyline wouldn't work. You'd be like, him and his daughter would have had a falling out much sooner, or she would have ran off. So she keeps the story, gives reason for the storyline to be at the point where it is when the show starts. And I liked it, like she was, I guess you could say she was a little nosy, but she came from a caring place, so I liked her as a character.
And she wants to go into business with the food truck now.
Yeah, well, she wants to help Sean out. She wants to be part of something, she's agreed to donating the money to help him out, but she wants to do something. I think she's quite bored. Yeah, so that's quite cool. Any other questions you have for me or points of discussion?
I was confused why the daughter didn't say, "Oh, I actually kissed your patient." That kind of went nowhere.
I don't know what they're planting there. Like, I feel like she's kind of in love with him, but he's apparent that there's an age gap. So I don't think anything major will come of it, but I think that's probably why. She doesn't want to tell her dad everything. She also doesn't want Sean to, get in trouble even though he didn't do anything wrong. So that's probably why. And, secrets are fine. As the audience, we can know what goes on, but the characters don't need to know everything about everyone.
So, bottom line, obviously you're looking forward to season 2?
Yeah, I am. I really am. I think it was one of the most, fun first seasons I've seen of a show, and, not just all-out laughs. It was quite serious in nature, and the storyline was really, really serious too. So looking forward to it. Absolutely loved it. I think 88% fair. If not, maybe it should have been a little bit higher.
I didn't like it as much as Luke, but I still enjoyed it. And I'm still looking forward to season 2, but, if there wasn't a season 2, I wouldn't lose sleep about it, but I still think it's worth watching. Apple TV, they just keep coming up with high quality shows. They're, in my opinion, I think they're actually the best streaming service when it comes to quality over quantity out of all the other streaming services.
Yep, totally agree with that.
Well, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this review. As always, you're awesome and keep being awesome, and like and subscribe. Bye-bye.